Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I know there's at least some morning and evening people in here. I don't know where everyone's from, but um, if you haven't done so already, um, in the Zoom group chat, if you could please just write down your role, whether you're a teaching artist or teaching artist plus or something totally different, and your expectation for the next hour or so. And if you could write for yourself somewhere that we can't see, the most important values to you as an individual teaching artist or to the organization that you represent or work for. If we could just take a moment, everyone take a moment to do that, because we should see a bunch more popping up. And there's some loud noise here. It's New York City. So if that doesn't stop soon, I'm going to need to run and close a window, but I think we're okay because it'll probably bother everyone. Also, I said this, but I know some people have just come in. If you can open your camera, please do. I'm looking at everyone. I'm doing my best for myself and for everyone to have the feeling that we're all in a space together. So it's really helpful when I can see you guys and see what's happening. So I'd also like to talk a little bit about how this will work. So it's 9:06 here now. We're going to go to a bit after 10. Looking at all these pop up. Thank you. So I'm Tobin, for those of you who came. Lisa, she's in the square next to me on my screen. I don't know where she is for you, but she's waving. That's Lisa Sonneborn. And then Shawn Aleong is next to her on my screen. He's waving too. So we're all here to share some specific work that has been done by us in the disabilities community. And also there's a wealth of knowledge, in this room, this virtual room, and not just with the hosts. So my goal is that this is really led by your inquiry. So I'm going to ask you guys to write in your questions as they come up. If it's a really urgent question, write it in all caps. I know you're not yelling at me. I'll just know that that's urgent, okay? I'll leave some time afterwards where I ask for questions. And then for the end of this session, we'll just be spending time in discussion. So we'll be looking at questions you've sent in. I'll ask you if you'd like to be unmuted, and you unmute yourself, and you can speak directly with one of the three of us, or you can just communicate via group chat, and I will be your surrogate voice for this. So we can do that. I'll speak about some of the work I've done for just about 15 minutes, so I'm not going to get super in depth. I want you guys to ask questions about aspects of what it is I'm talking about, so we can get deeper later, or maybe you won't want to go deeper. Lisa's organization has a wealth of programs and things they're doing. She's going to talk a little bit about a few of them. Same deal. Please ask your questions. Sound good? Oh, and because I like responsiveness from a group, and we're not, so like if I ask if that sounds good, like give me a thumbs up or like nod or something. Yeah, that feels good. So I don't feel like I'm watching TV. All right. So also, I really want to treat this like a think tank. Okay, we have all these people with different experience in the room. You're gonna hear me talking a lot. I'm not using any slides or PowerPoint. I apologize for that, but I do want to hear you guys a lot too. The overarching question that I'm bringing to this, and that I'm going to try to kind of keep things moving around, is this idea of how do we adapt and translate our values, the work we're doing, into different communities. So this can apply to more, like we're going to talk specifically about the disabilities community in the next hour, but this can apply to anything. As we move into different communities, as we're working with different individuals, how do we respect their uniqueness? How do we be responsive to the community? So keep that in mind, please, as we're talking about the different things. So Lisa, is there anything you want to add before we kind of go into the first 15 minutes? Okay, great. So thank you. I'm seeing so this is for everyone. We all have access to the Zoom group chat. Take a look at who you're in the room with. We didn't get that great moment we normally have before we do something where we're talking in the hallway and eating food and drinking coffee. So this is our opportunity to see who you're with. You can just kind of scroll around. I'm seeing a lot of teaching artists, of course. So just to get a feel for who you're with. And I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what I've been doing during the pandemic with disabilities community.
Wow. Well, wow, Tobin, this is like going on a world tour, just virtually.
Yes,
Yeah.
world tour.
Yeah.
I like that. So I don't know if any of you have read our bios. I don't want to talk too much about all that, but I worked for many years with Lincoln Center Education as a lead teaching artist. We end up working with a lot of different communities in that job, and I was really lucky in the last few years of my work with them to be introduced to the disabilities community. That was a new community for me to work with. I had a lot that I needed to learn, and I had a great educators who I was working with, and classroom teachers who and individual students who taught me so much. It became one of the most meaningful to me kind of realms of teaching artistry when I was in the classroom. And as I moved into consulting, which is what I'm doing now, it's an area where I really enjoy working with others to just do like new and exciting work in that area. So when the pandemic began here in New York and none of us knew what to do, and a lot of us just wanted to work so that we felt okay, because better to be working than not working. I reached out to some of my former colleagues who were just excellent at working in this community. And we decided we would we wanted to do something for the young adults that we had worked with in some of the non-matriculating high schools that we had been involved with while we were at Lincoln Center. So the first thing we did was go onto group chat rooms. The first thing I did actually was go into group chat rooms in Facebook and reach out to former teachers in the schools just to find out, is there anything that you feel like people need? Then we went to parents and started speaking to parents of young adults. If we were to do something, what would you want it to be? What would be important to you? So step one was really speaking to the community as best we could. What we ended up doing was 3 days per week arts program, online, of course. One day would be dance, one day would be music, one day would be visual art. And we reached out to a lot of parents. We decided to keep sessions short. So we were only doing 20-minute sessions. And we continued to do that for what we had hoped was going to be the entirety of the kind of being the time that we would be on a mandated homestay. It's since extended, and that program has concluded. But we did this for 3 months, 3 times a week, and started to really discover some things we thought would work that did not work, and some things that were really beautiful benefits to working in this sort of distanced online environment. If anyone has a question right now, go ahead and type it up, because that feels like a point where you might be wondering something. But if not, I'll plow ahead a little bit and give you the general overview. Any questions coming up? Oh, too new. Okay, no. So our expectation was that we might be able to deal with a classroom online in the same way we dealt with a classroom in person. What we were immediately faced with was the fact that the challenge of not being able to do hand over hand work, of not being able to read the room as effectively as we had in the past, and the challenge, I'm going to summarize the biggest challenges for you guys. The challenge of students not feeling like they're watching TV. To build that real kind of human connection with students. We also realized that the ratio of kind of teaching artist to student changed completely. So where we would be fine with like 10 to 20 kids or young adults normally, we really went down to 1, 2, 3 tops. That may seem obvious. I don't know if that does to you guys or not, but what we were finding with what was happening with teaching artists and with schools is that that equation was not being recognized. People were being expected to work in the exact same ratio as before. So once we got that adjusted and we were working, it ended up being 1 teaching artist to about 2 or 3 kids each time. So it became very like direct. And we started to explore intensive reading of the student, like listening to them, if they're not verbal, watching them, changing our plans for the 20 minutes based entirely on the student. This is all good teaching artist practice, whether in any case, but everything became sort of magnified in this distanced environment. And also we started exploring what I call this sort of vertical, I don't know why I call it that, this vertical space when we're working. So like from here, right? If everyone can see me, to like back here, if you have more space. We found that using that space was like really helpful for engaging people online. So that's some very practical stuff. We also, and this will be the last thing I say without question, we also found that even though there were challenges in working in this way, and it was difficult to get people sometimes to interact with a screen, there was breakthroughs. There was things that happened in this way that we're hearing from parents, we're seeing and experiencing with students, things that had never happened before. Someone dancing who had never been willing to dance before. So thinking about why is that? What about this environment causes certain things to be more successful? So so that's an overview of this one example of a 3-month program. Obviously there's more I could say, and there's of course less I could have said, but if anyone right now, because I do want to turn it over for Lisa and now to give an overview of the work that they've been doing, which is focused on art making and community art making, and it's another important side of this that I really wanted, and I'm so happy to have her here to share. If you have questions more about this sort of online work with, in my case, it was young adults on the autism spectrum, please post them up. I'm gonna hold them. If it's urgent, write urgent in big letters, like it has to be answered now. Otherwise, I'm gonna hold it to the end, and as we have our discussion, those questions will be addressed, okay? I'm seeing some participation, preparation. Okay, great. Thank you. If everyone can just try to think of a question, it's great practice into inquiry. The more questions we have, the better our discussion will be. And while those questions are coming up, I'm not seeing any big urgent. So I'm gonna hand things over to Lisa, and she's here with Shawn, and please welcome her. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Good morning, or afternoon, or evening. I'm Lisa Sonneborn. I direct media arts and cultural programs for the Institute on Disabilities at Temple University here in Philadelphia. And I'm here with my friend and colleague, Shawn. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi. My name is Shawn Aleong, and I am a disability advocate, but I'm also a actor in a first kind of love. So, what is a play produced by the Institute on the disabilities in the civil rights movement?
Thanks, Shawn. And we'll tell you more about that in a bit. Shawn and I have been for years colleagues and co-conspirators, so I'm really glad he's here talking about our programs with me today. I think we both would like to thank ITAC, particularly Madeline and Tobin, for inviting us to join this conversation. And I'm glad it's a conversation, because while we'd like to give you an overview of the types of programs that we've offered in the past and how we're using what we've learned from that programming to work in this COVID-informed world, we're also really eager to hear what you're all doing and to learn from you. I noticed that a couple of our Philly colleagues are on the Zoom call, Ben Lloyd and Christine Rouse, who are doing really extraordinary work in supporting emerging performers with disabilities. So I know our conversation will be really rich today. I was going to put on, and I will do, put on a PowerPoint that just has slides, images from the work that we've done over the years and work we're engaging with now. If that becomes a distraction at any point, it's just on a very slow loop. I just wanted to give you guys a sense of what we do. But if that becomes a distraction, please let Tobin know in the chat, and I'd be happy to turn that off. So I'm going to start that now. Oops. Maybe it would help if I shared the screen.
Yeah.
Technology.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got it. Thanks. So some background about where I work. I work for the Institute on Disabilities. We are considered a UCED, a University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. There's one in every state in the US. We happen to be Pennsylvania's, again, affiliated with Temple University. Of our network of 67 organizations, we are one of only a handful that engage in the arts as an extension of our mission, which is to change systems and to frame disability as a natural part of the human experience. So we think of our work in media arts and culture, we call that our MAC programming, really as a means to think about the persistent questions in the disability community and what art might do to answer some of those persistent questions. Our MAC work has spanned oral history, public performance, archival interpretation, storytelling, and I think we share our work in lots of different spaces. So we've worked in theaters, in traditional cultural arts spaces, but also in civic spaces and even institutions for people with intellectual disabilities. So we've learned a lot about how to work in collaboration with people with disabilities, I hope. And I also hope that we've learned a little bit about how to be responsive to those communities. Part of being responsive for us means that our work is ideated with and is done in collaboration with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. So what that means for us is that all of our work starts with deep listening in our community. So what we tend to do is go to our community, ask which questions feel live for them at the moment, which issues feel pressing or persistent. And of those issues, we think about which can best be answered by an arts-based intervention or methodology. I think our work tends to be as strong as our partnerships, and we've been really lucky over the years to work in partnership with some extraordinary teaching artists and cultural partners. I see my role as the MAC director as leading these teams through multi-layered programming. The teams, again, involve artists, professional artists, emerging artists with disabilities, and often family members. The programs you'll start seeing in our slideshow have all been very, very different, but they do have a few things in common. First, we always ask the members of our team to kind of check their assumptions about ability and disability at the door, and to really think about how they can push their own practices and adapt their tools to really support people with disabilities in expression and meaning making. What's really important to us is process. Sometimes process becomes more important than the end product or the outcome. We're also really guided by a belief that art in lots of settings, particularly institutional settings, can not only serve as an intervention, but sometimes it also serves as a radical act. So today, with support from Shawn, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of our past and current projects. We're going to move through pretty quickly so that we can open this up for conversation. Okay. You're seeing some images of programs. The images that you're seeing at the moment are from our play, A Fierce Kind of Love, that Shawn is going to talk about. Just to give you a bit of background, Fierce was a devised work. It was devised with a company of 9 actors with and without disabilities over 4 years, written by a local playwright named Sully Holland. We started Fierce because, again, like most of our programs, we started with inquiry within our community. We asked people with disabilities what was important to them, and what we were hearing was that they wanted to have their history recognized. They wanted to have the history of the disability rights movement in particular elevated alongside that of other social justice movements, other national rights consciousness movements. And so we thought the best way to do that would be through public performance. Fierce has been mounted, I think, 4 times since it premiered in 2016. It's had audience of several thousand people in the Philadelphia area. All of our shows are fully accessible, and what that means is that I think we've welcomed a diversity of audience into this play that is really not typical in a theater space. What's really exciting is many of the people who've come to see the show are experiencing theater for the first time. So I've said a lot about Fierce. Shawn, why don't you talk a little bit about the process of making Fierce, because you were involved from the very beginning.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Well, once again, my name is Shawn Aleong, and I am so delighted to be here with my colleague Lisa Sonneborn. Thank you, Tobin. Thank you, ITAC, for having me. So, about the process. It was very important that we told the history of the disability rights movement, and it was very important that the stories was told by people with the disabilities, and what was a process was like. And Miss Lisa, you can help me say, you can jump in, but we have a device process where we was all sitting in a room and bouncing ideas of each other and telling our own stories and how we felt in in society. And what was so important that we discovered was of his kind line of his kind alone was like a timeline because it tells you the struggle, the victory, the setback, and the triumph of the disability community. And we talk about big H history and little H history. So big H history will look like the Civil Rights Act of 1965, but also 1965 was a fellow cast member of mine, Lori McFarland, who is the disability advocate. And it was so important that we have this some type of connection because sometime while we was making the play, it was hard for myself to realize how we was treated back in those days and did not have the same rights as other people. So why it's important to make this feel make it feel this piece was about all about bringing people together. It was also Miss Lisa, do you want to chime in?
No, I think you're doing a great job. But one of the things maybe I'll ask you to talk about is what it was like to work with the teaching artists in the cast. So we had 4 teaching artists in the cast. What do you think you learned from them, and what maybe did they learn from you?
And Shawn, if I could just, I'm thinking of a conversation we had when I first met you too, in addition to add on to that question, when you talked about the importance of being given the opportunity to tell your own story in your own way. And I'm just wondering if when you're talking about working with teaching artists, if you could share how the teaching artists were part of making that happen and making that successful. Yeah.
There was 4 amazing teacher artists. Lee Edsel, Charlie down Mansell, to Kathy, I forgot her last name.
Vincent?
Kathy System and Brian Wilson. And what I learned from them that anyone can be a actor. Anyone can be in the theater space. And what I think that they learned from me that people with the disabilities have the same strength as we do. It it if not more. And I think what was so empowering is when we went through a hard time putting this piece together, because some of these histories was hard. The teaching artists stop and say, take your time. We here and we understand. So that allow me to be me, and for me to really form that bond as a newly actor could come into that space and know that how everyone just bond out of genuine compassion and love for one another. And I will remember this one time I thought that I could not do the play because of all the history, but I never forget this. Me and Charlie Dalmasau went to lunch, and I start talking to him how I really felt about the situation, and that really got me through it.
Thanks, Shawn. Um, I heard some really amazing things from what you just shared that match some of my experiences. And it's really great to hear words like compassion and love and giving space, because I think they're so important for teaching artists to remember. And it's great to hear that you pulled those things out of the practice. So,
but to Tobin, I also want to talk about how we or also shape the content of the play, because one of my fellow cast members was saying we were rehearsal and we used the R word as one of the scenes in the play. And Laurie Moss Farmer and Charlie, that Marcel had this moment where Charlie said the word, the R word, and Laurie say person, and then Charlie say person, and then Laurie say human being. Am I right about that, Miss Lisa?
Absolutely.
so that was a very powerful moment that you're remembering. So, and we're always looking to create those moments, right? So, Shawn, Lisa, I want to try. We're getting a great. I don't know if you're watching the group chat, but we're getting a lot of great questions coming up. And I know there's lots more information on all of this stuff we can switch to. I'd love to kind of transition at this point to having the conversation be led by some of these questions that are up here. And what I'm going to suggest is that we've gotten to go back and forth, but from questions from earlier and questions from what we've just been hearing about the work that you guys have been doing. They're all really great, as I would expect from a room full of teaching artists. So as I scroll back, I am seeing actually worked and which didn't. Okay. I'm going to combine these. So we had a question about, can you talk a little more about how you got participants to participate, to dance, make music, etc., in an online environment? How did students respond? And I'm going to just run that together with the next question. I think they can be answered at the same time, which is, can you talk about which types of activities worked and which didn't, given the screen situation? So let me answer that briefly, and then we'll switch to some of these other questions. What activities did not work given a screen? So obviously, that's tough. I mean, it's hard to say which didn't work. I think we did a really good job of planning for things that we knew. We avoided things we knew wouldn't work because of the screen. So, and really like focused on being very active and like really showing things and engaging things that, and I saw this in another question. Here was the biggest struggle about with the screen. There's no tactile communication happening at all. Things that didn't work with the screen were things that would involve tactile communication, whether it's because the person, that student, that's the way they communicate mainly, or that's just a way that they're able to express how they're feeling. That's a way for you to confirm how you're feeling about what they're doing. So it's really like getting that communication completely taken out of the equation. I was struggling with this with one student, and the solution I had was we started to do like a hand exercise. I don't know if this would work with everyone, where it was literally like I would, in every session, I would put my hand up and we would like touch finger, right? Like stuff like that. It seems little, that like would change everything. Or like in the beginning, we would like, I'd put my hand up to the screen and they'd put their hand up to the screen. It was a way to kind of replace that. So that's that translation, figuring out a translation for what would have been me putting my hand on the shoulder as part of communicate, or when we're drawing, putting my hand on the hand of that student at that time.
And Tobin, one thing that I don't know if other people are encountering this, we do have a program right now that we're wrapping up. It was a program for emerging writers that was meant to be, before COVID, a series of in-person writing workshops that had to move very quickly online. And one of the things that we have this issue all the time when we do our work in institutional settings is how you navigate relational autonomy. So for some of the folks that we're supporting, their parents have to be, or caregivers or support staff have to be involved so that they can access the technology we're using to communicate. But by the same token, the presence of a family member or caregiver really makes it difficult for them to really feel that they can express themselves as they might like. So this idea of navigating those relationships and having the support staff cede authority to the person we're working with is something that we're constantly challenged by with this virtual platform.
Yeah, and that leads, there is a question about that, about preparation providing for parents, where parents engaged alongside. I think that relates to what you're talking about. The answer to that is capital letters, yes. Is a huge part of what we were doing. I was not working with the school with the project we were doing. We did this on our own. And I was only leading the one of the 3 times a week. I was doing the visual arts component, but every other time I was online before, during, and a lot of times after with the parents. So, and what we would do debriefs sometimes, and the thing we had talked about was the parents are as much a part of this community and as much of partners in this as the young adults were, and we just really started treating it that way. So Ryan Pater, who was the teaching artist who we brought in to do music, all of the songs he created with the students addressed the parents or family members. So they'd be singing about their mom. They'd be singing about their the sister who's there with them, and then the sister would come in the room and start singing. Or it just, we didn't feel like we were just teaching the particular young adult. So interesting. As far as how do we get people to participate, I think it's the same way you would get people to participate normally, is just that we're trapped in this box. So like I said, the thing, we needed to have very engaging prompts. We had to come up with all of the things we used towards the activities related to what people were, what the students were experiencing. I'm calling them students, but they weren't actually students, what the young adults were experiencing in their daily life. So there was a question about, do we communicate with them? Yes. In whichever way that particular person communicated. A whole lesson on art might be based on the favorite foods that they've been eating during the pandemic time, right? Or another one was about the person who was their hero, or who was helping them get through it. So it was all based on things that were like very present and very real. Even the dancing was all based on movements of things that were happening to them that day or the next day. It wasn't like, we're going to teach you something from Mark Morris. No, it was, we're going to do the toothbrush dance. We're going to make choreography out of everyday movements that could be related to. That led to a lot of participation. So that checked off some of those questions. If anyone wants to chime in, wave your hand. I want to now scroll down to some of the question for, I have a question for Shawn. I just want to make sure I get this right. Let me read through. I think this is more of a comment for you, so I want to share it with you from Celeste. Thanks, Shawn. I feel a safe environment is key. Oh, I just lost. Having information spoken about and then being all connected and having each other's back with everyone in that room was key. Beautiful thing to add. Building trust in the room, having each other's back, right? Super important. Expressed beautifully by you, Shawn. That you felt like everyone had your back?
Like, not just my back, but the whole the disability movement back. Will you say so, Miss Lisa?
Yeah, I think I was. But honestly, you know, you were in the room more than I was with this group of teaching artists, so I feel like your experience is more important to share than mine.
Yeah. This play was such a great experience.
Hey, Shawn.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting question for you. I'm trying to, there's so many questions now. I'm scrolling through trying to find it. It was about intersectionality. And if the person who, I'm having trouble finding it now. So maybe if the person who had that question can wave a hand or unmute and ask it, that would, otherwise I'm going to keep looking.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, that was me that asked about
Great.
intersectionality. Hey, Shawn, I really love hearing about your experience. Thanks for being so open about it.
Thank you.
I guess in this time where people are on the streets protesting civil rights, you know, you yourself are a Black person as well as someone with disabilities. I'm curious to hear about how the intersectionality of all these different parts of our identity comes forth in your work, or comes forth in the type of work that we all can be supporting with your various communities that you're a part of. But yeah, I'd love to hear how those things work together.
Well, in the play, I paid a great disability advocate named Roland Johnson, who was a African American man, and he let a chant like who's in charge? We are. Who in charge? We are. Um so I'm sorry, can you repeat your question again?
Yeah, of course, no problem. I love that. Who's in charge? We are. I guess I'm just curious. There's so many things to consider
Yeah.
as folks who don't, like myself, I don't work with students that have different sorts of abilities right now.
Yeah.
I find my work quite narrow in that way. I think that my institution is quite ableist. So I'd be curious to hear all the different considerations for the different communities that you're a part of and how those things work together.
So it's for me, it's having a disability and being a African American man, like just knowing who you are and just embracing who you want to be. And it's so important to have a community that sticks behind you no matter what, and see your potential. Like me, I'm going to tell you the truth. I never thought I can act into my awesome producer, Lisa Sonneborn, called me up and say, hey, we had this project and we want you to be a part of it. And I told her I cannot act, but she said, sure you can.
I didn't call you. I cornered you in a hallway.
Yeah.
I would not let you escape. If I
Thanks,
could add,
thanks, Brian. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
so yeah, Brianna, it's a really good point that you raised about intersectionality. And with a couple of projects that we're working on right now, it's really important and it's really challenging for us. Yeah, so the disability community tends to be very siloed. There are lots of reasons for that, you know, that we could go into for a long time. But it tends to be people with intellectual disabilities here, physical disabilities here, mental health concerns here, and so forth. And so with a couple of our projects that are coming up, we're really working against that. We really want for example, we're doing a project, an archival exploration with community archivists. And so in order to represent the intersectionality of the community the way we ought, it really requires some intentionality on our part. So really working our networks, going to our community partners and finding a way to do that. I also noticed, and I wanted, before we run out of time, to kind of lift this idea as well. I think Ben Lloyd posted something about the types of stories we tell. You know, do they always have to be stories about activism? Can't they just be stories? And we find that's really true also. You know, people with disabilities want to tell stories about their life. We're seeing this in our writing program, and also in response to having to move everything to virtual platforms with COVID. We started a pilot project, which is launching in just a couple of weeks, called Punchlight, where we ask local artists with disabilities to make work, sometimes on their own, sometimes in partnership with artists without disabilities, whatever they wanted. But essentially, we asked them to make 4 one-minute-long works that we'll be sharing through a YouTube channel. And our goal was really twofold. Partly the goal was really just to lift the work of artists with disabilities, for them to make the work they want to make and have that be seen on a wider platform. But the other thing that we've been noticing, as I'm sure you all have, is that as we all sort of went out of our institutions, you know, sort of mid-March, late March, many cultural places have started to make work, digital content, that's completely inaccessible. So it's really wonderful that people want to open up this platform and engage new audiences with digital content. But I have to say, I feel some level of frustration when I see a lot of this work, which is really wonderful and inventive, but inaccessible, because we know that people with disabilities have trouble accessing cultural spaces, including theaters, all the time. So surely digital content would be a no-brainer, right? This would be a way to welcome more people into this virtual space, and it isn't happening, or at least not as much as we would like. So in a few weeks, we hope to launch, again, a series of 4 minute-long video works. They're very raw. They're shot by the artists on their iPhone. But we hope that they do model accessibility and then hopefully inclusivity and intersectionality too.
Like, I was a part of Postlight, and I can say that it is a really wonderful project.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
So, just as a time check, we're approaching 10 o'clock. I want to, I think we can go up to 10:15. There's a ton of questions here. I want to pull out, there's some questions that I think apply to everything, which could be interesting. And one that came up was about process of choosing forms. I'd like if we could get to these things. Process of choosing forms, making sure we get feedback from participants. There was a question about that. And this one I really love. Let's hit this first. Someone asked about priorities. They were talking about working specifically with schools and how to prioritize. If you want your voice to be in the recording and you know that I'm talking about you, you can go ahead and unmute your mic. And if not, I will just do this on my own. But anyway, I think it would be really nice to look at some of the priorities that have come out and that we as panelists could share, but priorities for doing this type of work. Ones that I've heard as I've been listening through this, ones I'll throw out right away, and maybe we can elaborate, is this idea of radical listening that Lisa was talking about, and that I share a passion for that as a priority. Another is this idea of translating and not abandoning your mission and your values when you're working with a new community. And if that makes sense, like to me, that is a huge priority. If that makes sense to people, that how do we look for the same results and the same impact and just translate to the community so that they're not getting something lesser, that we're doing the work as a teaching artist of adapting the way we work to get to the same result. Are there priorities that you want to add, Lisa or Shawn, as far as in general working with the disabilities community in this case and other communities in general?
Shawn, anything that you want to add?
Just one word: accessibility. Just try to make everything accessible so that people can eat and enjoy no matter what, like no matter if it called caption or if it online or if it in person, like sensory lighting, like and stuff like that. Anything that you want to add, Miss Lisa?
Well, I think your point about accessibility, Shawn, is a really great point. And to that point, I'd like to say we also want to make sure that when we think about access, we think about people who don't communicate traditionally. So not only thinking about how to bring people into our programs, but the people that we ideate our programs with and include in our programming is really important. That's certainly a way for us to use art as an extension of our organization's mission and values. The other thing I would say, Tobin, is one of the nice things about where I work is we look at our media arts and cultural programming as a way to sort of check our mission and values all the time. If we're truly working within our community, then our community is really asking us to question our work, our approach, our methodologies, and that's been a pretty rich part of our process.
The self-questioning from inspired by the community. Yeah, self-reflect. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone in this room that knows me, but I am an avid aesthetic education fanatic and Maxine Greene person. So yes, self-reflection in our language, but so important. Thank you so much for saying that. Even when you think you've got it right, you need to be open to hearing and continually readjusting. And it's great to hear there's an organization doing that. I mean, I know there's many, but it's always good to hear of organizations doing that. Okay, so there's a bunch of like very quick, easily answered sort of practical questions from early on. And as we have this last 15 minutes, I love to just scroll down them and give the really quick, short answers. And then I would love to kind of open up a bunch of mics and see if we can have a discussion. I know it's always risky in this format. So some people were asking some very practical things. So I see you have outcomes. Can you tell us a bit about, all right, here we go. Here we are. Did you get any feedback from kids themselves? Yes. I think the answer should always be yes. I feel passionately and strongly, giant yes. Lisa would agree to that. I'm guessing that's a yes. Yeah. Experiencing people dancing for the first time, is that on virtual interaction? This person, Brianne, oh, this is Brianne again, talking about I guess you've experienced this too, a safety that comes with being at home in your own space, and that you would love to dissect that further. Safety at home, learning environment, encouraging that safety in other spaces. I'm hearing about that from other people. When I was in classrooms, we were working so hard to create that kind of safety in what's essentially a traumatic and hostile environment for many students. So maybe that's another think tank issue for another time. But is there anyone who wants to add anything to that right now? No. Okay. So this is interesting. Mia with Open Door Arts was asking, how did you adjust ratios? Did you use breakout rooms or have independent links? And if you're here, chime in. I'm assuming that question is in regards to my saying that we couldn't like work with as many people at one time. And I was thinking a lot about that in regards to clients I may be working with or future times or the continued times where we may be in a socially distant environment. And the solution I was thinking about and kind of how we were working is that if you take an hour and 10-minute class where you would have 10 students or you would have 20 students, now you're in a situation where you need to work with them online. I think you could do an equation for the ratio where you would be working online with a smaller number of students for a smaller amount of time, 10-minute sessions and then just do the division, right? And get through the students in that way, because I think what you could accomplish in that 10 minutes would be as robust and kind of rewarding as you and probably more so than the longer period of time with the whole group. So that's the thing that I'm exploring. Anyone want to add on to that? Yes, Lisa.
This is a lot of organizational time and commitment. But one of the things we've been finding through our writing project, and this has been echoed by the mentors who are working with us, is that for people with intellectual disabilities specifically, having an hour to 2 or 3 hours a week one-on-one with a mentor is really, really opening artists with intellectual disabilities up. It's opening their work up. It's opening the possibilities of new work up for them. This is also new for all of us. I can't give you any hard, fast data about that. But what we're experiencing is that the lack of environmental distraction and the singular focus on a person seem to be working really, really well and really advancing people in their own art making.
Like when I did my story for the story dispenser, it me and Mr. Sonneborn was sat aside a time for us to meet so that she can type my notes, send back to me, and then I let her know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Anyone? Thank you, Shawn. I'm trying to make sure we address everyone's questions. So excuse me for kind of like rolling through these quickly. If anyone wants to add to anything, please just unmute and shout out and let me know. I think we talked about this. Has anyone interacted with nonverbal people making visual art through a digital platform? So for myself, quickly, yes. That is the work that I was doing. I was working with a lot of nonverbal people making visual art, but I was not using a digital platform. So it's a half yes and a half no. I was in person. By that question, I'm assuming you mean like digital art making platform. If you mean making visual art with nonverbal people online, the answer is yes. That was part of what we were just doing. And I had a camera set up on my hand and the paper, and a camera set up on my face, and we, kind of established the connection of that, and we were able to work. That student could read, and the parent was with the student, and we were able to do things where we copied each other to start, and then we were able to do, there's so many different levels of nonverbal. So I guess the short answer would be yes, and I adjusted to that particular student's particular level of being nonverbal, which included there was some sign language, and there was the ability to communicate prompts through the caregiver. Is there anyone else who wants to share something about working in digital that wants to react to that question in the room?
Miss Lisa, we did the same thing when we went up to Salem Grove, and I worked with Jim C. And we did some type of recording, and then we post pictures up on the screen with the voices behind it, and it was a exhibit at City Hall.
Shawn's referring to a project that really happened in many stages over many years at an institution here in Pennsylvania for people with intellectual disabilities. We still have 4 operating institutions in our state. So we do a lot of work with people who don't communicate traditionally. And we found that really the best way to learn about institutional life is one from people who live in institutions. Those perspectives are often kept out of the record, the historical record about institutionalization. But the way in which we do it has to be, again, multi-layered and has to employ a bunch of different methodologies. We led an artist residency for about a week at the Selingsgrove Center a couple of years ago. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone about our learnings from that. because I know we're running low on time, but we haven't as yet worked with people who don't communicate traditionally on a virtual platform, although we're inching that way. We have a couple of proposed projects that would allow us to do just that. And I'd be happy to share those learnings down the road.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So there's thank you guys for being for the level of participation. You can probably tell I feel very rude because I really think it's important to always be paying attention to everything in the room, and I'm spending so much time trying to read through this this like very populated Zoom group chat, and I hope I'm not missing anything. I wanted to thank Peter just for like the positive shout out to Shawn. I don't know if you saw it, Shawn, but the ignition of your passion liberates you from disability. I just love that phrase, so I wanted to amplify that through the room. The idea of passion liberating us one from disability. So that's there for you, Shawn. And great. Margot Wood. Where are you, Margot? You're talking about Dance for PD, having online Zoom classes. I'm assuming that's a dance program for people with disabilities.
Yes, it's largely for Parkinson's, but it's really for anyone with movement challenges. So they've got online Zoom classes, but they also have a phone-in option for people that can't use Zoom or have got Wi-Fi problems or, you know, or visual challenges. So
great.
yeah.
Can you make sure, I guess, that Madeline has that, or however it works, that we can attach that to? I know some people who would love. I've been looking for something like that personally, so I'm sure there's many people. So thank you for sharing that. I would love to take. There's a lot of. I hope I got to everyone. If there's something really important, like shout out, and we'll take a little time. If not, I'd love you to go back to. And I'm looking to see if anyone's shouting. Nope. Okay. I'd love you to go back to that piece of paper I asked you all to write down about values or the mission of your organization, that thing that is most important. And just take a moment now at the end of our hour plus minutes to think about how you hold on to that and translate it to different communities. Specifically in this case, the many disabilities communities that may exist in your outreach or that you may want to be working with. And just write down some questions for yourself, write down some thoughts for yourself. I hope that everyone will take something out of this room forward. I noticed when I was reading who's here, there's some people who are already doing work in this community, and it seems like doing great work just from a little description. There's also a lot of people interested in doing work in this community who, from what it seemed like, have not. And I think that's also exciting. So I just want to encourage you to seek out information from those who have been working, seek out from people who've been working for a long time, and especially, most importantly, I think, seek out information from members of the community when you're doing this work. We won't have time to share what you're writing down, but it makes me feel good to know that you'll have that piece of paper with you somewhere on your desks or in your world, and it might lead you forward in doing more work. As far as and if anyone wants to write some final thoughts, because what gets written in here does get sort of put together with the archiving of this whole event, that would be great. So even if I didn't have a chance to read out loud what you wrote, it's part of it. And when people come back and watch this, they can hear your thought and your idea. So I hope we can keep things open so people can do that if they want. You can do it for yourself. I just want to say out loud that all of us panelists or hosts have agreed to be available to answer questions by email for a period of a couple weeks after this gets posted with the subtitling, so that people who were not here and able to ask questions while it was live will have a chance to have their questions answered. If you stay on the email list, I will be sending something out. I'm also willing, I like to do this with groups that I host. I'm willing to do 30 minutes, sort of free consultation chat. If there's something specific to you or your organization or your experience that you want to talk about that I might be able to help with, I'd love to just chat. So I will send the information out to you afterwards. If that's something you're interested in, please take me up on the offer.
Thank you. Thank you, Tobin, Lisa, and Shawn. I think everyone on the call would join me in thanking you for explaining your work and being so open about your experiences and just opening up for everyone to sort of learn and connect. I think everyone will also, if you scroll back through the chat, get a kick out of how many countries and how many people are logged into the call and connecting right now. So I do think it's a really amazing opportunity to stay in touch. With that being said, I think we're at the end.
Yeah, I just want to really quickly, I want to thank again Madeline and ITAC. Thank you, ITAC, for existing, because we need you. And thank you, Madeline, for doing all the work you do with it. Thank you, everyone in the room. I love this community, and I thank you for doing the work you do. It is so important. I'm so proud to be connected with this community and the work we do. And thank you thank you deeply, Lisa and Shawn, for coming and sharing what you're doing. I think it's so important for us to not just think about the work in classrooms, but think about this work in the community and the larger scope of things and the advocacy. So your voice is really important to this. So,
and just a quick plug, because Tobin's brought it up, our conference, which was meant to be happening in Korea in September, is now moving online. And so there will be an online conference. Saren is here, who is one of our colleagues in Korea. She's waving now and is helping us organize moving that online. So if you want to do this, but with like 300 or 400 of your colleagues from around the world and some really good keynote speakers, you can email me or go to the ITAC website and find out how to sign up for that too. End of plug.
And I'll add to the plug and say, I'll be there doing a workshop. I hope to see your faces.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone so much. I'm going to move to the email chain, but thank you for joining, and I will be in touch 24 hours from now.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.